Hello, everyone, and welcome in to the Takecast. I'm Davis Mattek, joined today by a man who prevented Peter Overzet from coming to my wedding, Mike Zakarian. Mike, you and I got married on the same day. Not same day, different year, literal same day. We have the same anniversary with our wives, and Peter was in your wedding, so did not attend my wedding. How you doing, buddy?
Dude, I'm good. I gotta tell you, I probably think about that at least once a year, and I do. There was like a little guilt, and I remember asking Pete to be in it, and he's like, "Holy shit, that's the same day as Davis." So listen, I'm sorry, and as long as you know, I still am thinking about it. I'll reach out on our anniversary and just say what's up.
To be honest, no hard feelings. Soccer Dave got to be there. I would have been really upset if Soccer Dave was not able to be there. So Mike, I was thinking about what would be a good show this week. We did the election show for the Takecast last week. I think that was good. I think one show on the election here on the channel on the podcast is probably good. So I was like, I haven't really on the free feed done a show about being self-employed. All the stuff about being self-employed, doing YouTube, all that's been behind the paywall on the Patreon. And I thought, who better to talk about that than someone who's in a very similar spot to myself? But I don't actually know, how did you end up making that decision? How did you end up deciding, you know what, YouTube, we're doing it. We're shipping it. Was it Top Shot related?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, I've been in New York for, I guess it's actually like 10 years next week, I think. And came here to do like comedy stuff. I was still working in education. I was working I was like at NYU and then Marymount Manhattan College doing some like higher ed administrative shit. But the reason I came to New York was like stand up and acting. And about like a month before COVID started being a thing, I had left my job to do it full time. And, just beautiful timing.
Beautiful
And
timing.
yeah. And then being in the city was kind of, locked down for what felt like 10 years. But because of that, I was just like, I needed something to do I needed some creative outlet. And then when this Top Shot thing started, a buddy of mine reached out and he's like, what if we just like record open or like go live for a pack opening for like 3 people or whatever? And then we had some fun with that. And that just kind of snowballed. But I guess I've been doing it full time, like maybe 2 years now. So for like 2 years, I was just kind of messing around with it before taking it seriously. And now, I mean, I still don't really know what I'm doing, but we're just doing it as much as we can to justify it, which I'm sure it must have felt like that. Like, what's your experience been the last, I don't know, what's it been like 2 months? Have you been doing this like full time for 2 months?
Like more like 4, like I
Months.
think I got let go early in June from Sports Grid. Like they did the move that a lot of companies are doing. They're like, why would we have full-time employees when we could simply not have full-time employees? It would be great to have fewer full-time employees, but roughly the same amount of content on air. And like, a lot of companies in the United States were like, dude, we're going all in on sports betting. We are going to generate billions of dollars in affiliate deals. And then what happened was actually there's no competition for sports books in the United States. DraftKings and FanDuel won. BetMGM, Caesars, Fox, ESPN Bet, all of these out, like they have no market share. BetMGM, I think, does still spend in the space a little bit. Like I believe they still sponsor shows on Sports Grid. And I know they just hired Brad Evans. So he does a content show for them. But basically, the idea that a multi-million-dollar company is going to be able to support themselves by having people sign up with their affiliate links to sports books, that's gone. The CPA deals are way lower, like what a company gets. I mean, you guys out there, you would not believe what some of these companies, when PAPSA first got repealed, were giving away to get customers. It was unbelievable.
I mean, you could just see it from like guys you wouldn't assume would do deals like that, getting deals. Like I remember when JJ Redick, the first time his show was sponsored by DraftKings and he started doing picks, and I was like, man, they must be just throwing buckets of money at JJ to do that. And then you were seeing it like the Athletic NBA show was opening. They had a couple, or all of the Athletic pods probably were opening with different like ad reads and stuff like that. I still can't get over ESPN coming in like 8 months to a year late and then thinking, hey, this'll crush. What?
And you would think that no one would have a better marketing arm than
Right.
ESPN, but they don't. They've been, the last thing I saw was that they have roughly a 5% market share in the United States of people placing sports bets. I mean, that's crazy. Because
Yeah.
I mean, certainly I was one of the people that thought, oh, ESPN comes in, they advertise, they have all, Monday Night Football, they got, and it just hasn't worked. They haven't converted. I mean, I have an ESPN bet. I'm not in a, well, actually, I am in a legal betting state now, starting in 2025. It just passed.
There you go.
In
Big election
in
win for you.
the big, huge, couldn't be a bigger election. That got me out. That got me out to the polls for sure. But yeah, so I started doing this in June, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. At first, I really wanted a full-time job. I was like, I had a full-time job. It's pretty easy. And there are great things about having a full-time job. Like, don't get me wrong. Like,
Benefits.
benefits are great, but like right now, I don't really know what I'm doing every single day. I'm in a pretty good routine right now of like, I got my YouTube schedule. You have the NBA bit. You're live at the same time every single day. But like, if people are just like, so like what I'm dealing with right now is this November, people are sick of fantasy football, man. They are fantasy footballed out.
Yeah.
They are like, my views are down, AdSense dollars are down, and I have like some good brand deals and things. Like, it's not like I'm not crying poor, but like I was looking at how much views and stuff my stuff was getting in September. And I was like, bro, why didn't I do this 5 years ago? I'd be rich.
Dude, I mean, though, I think too, and I'm excited you brought up the like looking at views and stuff. I think that because the hardest part about all of this, like, yes, figuring out the financial stuff, figuring out your schedule, like, yes, all of that stuff matters. I think mentally, like, that is the hardest part. Like the emotional roller coaster, like when the views are going up and the subs are going up, especially when you just start a channel too, because that's like stuff like pops right away. Once you get over those, like those milestones start hitting, it's like dopamine rushes, and you're like, oh yeah, dude, I should have, like you said, I should have done this 5 years ago. I'm cooking. And then you'll have some like plateau moments, and fighting through that and like keeping the same level of motivation through those times are like, I find that to be the most challenging aspect out of all of this. Because first year I was doing it, like the numbers just keep going, like they're going up, and you're excited about 100 new subs. You're excited about like 20 new subs. And then now I'm like, wow, man, I'm seeing people get plaques. I want a YouTube plaque. Like and you have to like constantly battle that. Last year was the first year that I like really felt like a stunt in growth, where I was constantly, and I've had this rule since I moved to New York and started doing comedy. I was like, I'm going to continue to pursue this thing until I don't see like progress. Like if we start like I'll do like quarterly or annually check-ins, and I'm like, if I'm not seeing progress, I need to reevaluate what I'm doing a little bit. And last year was the closest I came to being like, okay, do I need to, adjust? And luckily I have a supportive partner and wife, and she's like, just give it a little bit more time and see what happens. And then, we had a couple of breakthroughs in like the last like 3 or 4 months that have been helpful. But I really think like that's the hardest part, like you turning on the camera and talking, like whatever, making the content, that part you can do. It's like afterwards being like, oh man, I put in the same amount of work, and arguably the work is better now because I'm doing it for a year and a half. Why does this have 400 less views than like the 9th video I did?
No, it is. I mean, it's the social media problem amplified. We're like, oh man, no one's liking my posts. No one's but you're like, oh, no one watching this video means like I have less money, which sucks. No, it's like you totally feel that it is a reflection of who you are. And it's like, you start to question your decision making, like, dude, maybe I do just go get that State Farm job.
Yeah.
Maybe I do just go sell insurance. And like, also, NBA every single day, NFL every week, the calendar turns over. Like, dude, it's week 11. I've been saying the same thing about picking up Keaton Mitchell on waivers for 3 weeks.
Right.
I don't have a new point to make about Puka Nacua, and it's like people enjoy it. And so what's helpful for me is I like to think about my relationship to content and like how I think about it. It's like, oh, who are the YouTubers I watch? And like, I mean, the thing is, I only watch like really successful YouTubers, like people with millions of subscribers, but like Twitch, not anymore because I don't have time. But when I worked a full-time job and I could just have stuff on in the background, I would watch like relatively small Twitch streamers. And like, I just liked having it on. I didn't really care if what they had to say, if they were changing my worldview. And it's like, oh, it's just nice. It's just nice to hang out. And that kind of helps ground me a little bit.
Yeah, no, definitely. I also think like Pete's done a real good job with this where,
Pete's the goat of this.
Yeah, but it's all like community driven shit. Like I think when you feel like you're getting buy-in from other people, that kind of helps float during the, whether it's like the slow news days or whatever. Just like you have like inside jokes you go back on. There's people in the community that are all like firing on all cylinders that kind of that help with that stuff. So I think like that's some of the most important stuff that you do, especially early on when you're building the channel, is just kind of building, as dorky as that sound, is building community. But I think about the stuff that I still watch. Like I still watch No Dunks almost close to every day.
Yeah, those guys are the goats.
Yeah, exactly. But they've got so many people tuning into their stuff. They've had their own TV show and they still have like the same community driven feel. And I think they'd be like that whether they had 100 people watching or 100,000 people watching. That's just like who they are, and you just gravitate towards those people.
So much of it is when you do go into influencing content creation or whatever, it is your relationship with the people who engage with your content. Like if you are like, no, I'm going to make my brand being the greatest analyst of this sport ever, the market for that pretty low.
Right.
Because there can, like, Zach Lowe is like a unique phenomenon. Like whatever Zach Lowe decides to do after getting fired from ESPN, if he starts a Substack, if he starts a YouTube, whatever he decides to do,
that's where you're going.
Insane, so successful. Going to make him more money than he was making at ESPN. ESPN will have been laughably wrong to have let him go. But like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a third, like a less popular ESPN basketball writer. I don't know. I'm having a let's call it the 17th most popular basketball writer.
There we go.
That guy, whoever he is, probably is having a harder time generating if it's just about his ability to analyze basketball.
Right.
Like I'm like, okay, here's a great example. Dunked on Prime. Nate Duncan and Danny LaRue. So they got in so early to the game. Like they were like the nerd basketball podcast 10 years ago, maybe longer, honestly. I'm trying to think about how long I've been listening to that podcast.
Forever. Same thing. It's a long time.
But if just two guys, like if they wiped this, everyone got memory wiped. They didn't remember the podcast. They didn't remember Nate Duncan. They didn't remember Danny LaRue. And they just had to start over from scratch right now. They would not be successful. And that is not anything that's saying they're bad at their job. They're great at their job. It's one of my favorite podcasts. But their selling point is how much they know about basketball, not their personality, their marketing ability, any of that.
Right. I think, yeah, like they would have a very niche market. I think they would only gravitate towards the other analytical dorks of the basketball space. That would be like, which would be me, but like, that's
exactly
it. That's it. I'm not going there because they have like really good inside jokes. That's not like a Hollinger when he does his podcast with John Hollinger. That's probably the closest we get to that sort of camaraderie feel almost.
Inside jokes are so nerdy that it's like it's funny to me. Like with like their Watfo, like what are the fucking odds? Like, yeah, that's really funny to me, but like that is not going to be a bit that kills on YouTube in general.
No. Yeah, I know. I'm with you. I think I am excited for whatever Zach Lowe's going to do next. To this morning, he was tweeting about Starburst flavors and ranking those, and I feel like that
he's been posting a lot on Instagram, which I don't know. I don't know what the. Do you think you have to think he didn't know he was getting laid off?
I know. Yeah. I don't think so. I bet there were some whispers going on that there was going to be another big round or something, but that he would be safe. My guess is he's not allowed to do anything else for another year. I'm sure he's like still, unless somebody like buys him out. So he's like, I guess I'm going to Threads.
He did he did on September 24th. He did Ian Begley and JJ Redick, which obviously he only got the JJ Redick one because JJ Redick, because of the ESPN relationship,
right?
So that is, and it was the next day. So it was September. It was so like I don't think he would have known.
No
that
way.
would have been And to do it right before the season starts is so yeah. Do you know Ethan Sherwood Strauss? Do you read his stuff?
Yeah, I've got a real love-hate relationship with that stuff.
Okay, so I love Ethan Sherwood
Yeah.
Strauss. I'm he's actually been on this show. He doesn't. I don't think he even remembers that I exist. But I'm so fascinated by what he did with his career
Yeah.
in our same vein. So he got laid off from ESPN. Then he did The Athletic. Then he got laid off from The Athletic, and he was like, you know what? I'm sick of this, dude. I'm doing my own thing. And he is like the ultimate community builder because
Oh.
he only nominally writes about basketball. Mostly what he writes are takes.
Mhm.
Like mostly it's takes, and sometimes you'll agree with him and sometimes you won't agree with him. But I mean, I certainly don't I would not have the ability to do what he has done
No,
because
I mean, he's
yeah.
literally not talking about sports. Like occasionally he has some Brock Purdy piece. Like I feel like we get a lot of Niners takes, but like for the most part, he's talking about how like the NBA cover or the media covers the NBA. He's talking about the business of it all, or he's deciding that we should be more pro Caitlin Clark than we are. It's usually like stuff like that. And like he wrote, what was his most recent one on like Lebitard? He didn't like how Lebitard talked about the election
Well,
to
it's so he always retains something that I try and emulate, which is a bit of detachment from the situation,
Mhm.
not trying to not he's not saying, "Oh, I voted for Kamala or whoever," but he just was like, "I think this is a bad idea if you are in Dan's business
Mhm.
to do this, and
Right.
this is why I think it's a bad idea." And it's like, yeah, it's so inside baseball. It's stuff that a normal person should not care about, but he writes about it in such a way that you do care about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I know I said I love a hate. I'm not. I mean, I'm a subscriber. I remember finding that. I honestly, I probably found it like a lot of people. He wrote something about Woj that I needed to read, and it was behind the paywall. And I was like, all
Yep.
right, I'm signing up. And then I was like, what the hell are these podcasts? And now I cherry pick a little bit more than I did before. I was like, I would consume everything early on, and now I'm a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm kind of I'm actually like fascinated with him. I probably bring him up on this podcast like twice a month, and
Yeah.
I actually did send him an email not that long ago, and he did not respond, which is fine.
Yeah.
You're on no obligation to respond to my emails, but Ethan, if you're listening, please come on the show again. I really want to pick your brain.
He responded to me saying he was gonna come on the show, and then when scheduling came, I ghost. Which again, same thing. You don't owe me anything. I'm always surprised when people respond to messages in like
Mhm.
cold call messages anyway. So, but he's a fascinating one.
And it's more just the overall thing of like the thing that people respond to is you finding the joy,
Hmm.
like the thing that you like to do. It is bad advice in general to be like, oh, this is a market inefficiency, and I'm going to attack this market inefficiency if you don't enjoy it, or
Yeah.
or if you're even if you're not good at it. Like if I was like, oh, you know what the market really needs? The market really needs another set of fantasy football projections.
Yeah.
That's really what it's like. There's a lot of fantasy projections out there, but I'm actually going to be better at doing that. One, I would not be better at doing it. But two, it's like that's so oversaturated. And don't get me wrong, people out there. There's nothing that's so oversaturated that good work won't come through. Like nothing. But
But
go ahead.
no, like yeah, if you didn't already want to do that, then you shouldn't do that. Like I'm almost I'm more of on the side of like, would I be doing this regardless? Like, and that's why because
Exactly.
early on when I was doing the Top Shot stuff, I was like obsessed with it. I like it felt like a NBA stock market. I thought that was cool. It reminded me. I don't. Did you ever do this? I think it was called Wall Street Sports. You ever hear of Wall Street Sports? This was like, so this is probably like 2002 maybe, but it was some fake game that was essentially like you could buy stock in players and the stock goes up, goes down. And this is what it felt like for basketball. It was new, it was exciting. Everybody was stuck inside. I was talking to my friends about this anyways. Let's just fire up the camera. Let's do it. And then when that stopped being fun, when I stopped caring about Top Shot, I still continued to do it for like, I don't know, maybe a year. And I was like, this sucks. Like, I don't like doing this. Like, this is a career I have chosen that I'm not successful at yet, that I'm not making a ton of money. And I'm going to
Right.
use this time to cover something I don't even like anymore. I'm like, I can't do this. And then that's when I finally had like that shift a little bit where I was like, well, what do I like doing? And I love, again, like the stock market aspect of it, the fantasy sports aspect of it, DFS betting, whatever. And I was like, well, let's focus on that because that's what I'm doing anyways. So let's talk about that. Because you're right, people pick up on that. Nobody wants to watch you have a bad time.
No, and there's so much content, Mike.
Yeah.
There's so much content in the world. You could never watch, listen, engage with everything you wanted to. You couldn't read all the books you want to.
No.
Like the way that you spend your time using that stuff is like a real choice. You know, I'm always so conscious of the time spent as being your great value, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's really the currency of your life. And you don't want to watch, you don't like, dude, you could go watch The Penguin on HBO instead of watching me be miserable reading my waiver wire column or whatever.
Right. And there's such a difference too between like, you know, you could be mad about something that you're still passionate about. Like not, you know, you're not always just like happy all the time about it. But if you can like feel it that you're like, I'm not enjoying this, the audience can sense that like 10x. So like there's only so much acting you can do to make people believe that you're still into it. So it's just like don't even waste your time. Don't even waste your time. Don't waste their time with it either because it's not going to be good. It's not. I can always feel when I'm like mailing it in. I can always feel it. Like because normally all of my shows are just about an hour, almost every single one. And if I like look at the clock and we're 30 minutes in and I'm feeling the energy waver, I'm like, oh, this sucks. We did a bad job today. I know at the 30-minute mark if this is a good show or a bad show.
That so I definitely relate to that. The ones that drag for me are just like I do a couple solo shows a week, and sometimes the solo show I'm like I'm good and caffeinated. I had a good workout that morning. I got good sleep. Like I'm ready to go. And then sometimes I'm just like, bro, I'm tired right now.
Yeah.
I and it's like, well, there actually the you know, and I'm sure you deal with this too. There actually is no consequence for just being like, all right, I'm out of here later.
Right? I know.
You know, no one's gonna yell at you.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get an email from your boss to be like, hey, we need to talk about your poor performance, which actually in a way is like more motivating.
Yeah.
To be like, dude, the only one you're letting down is yourself. Like you got to work hard for yourself.
Well, I was going to ask you that because I've said this a couple of times. This is the hardest I've worked at anything. Like it's the most most motivated I've been at any job that I've had, and for definitely the least amount of money thus far that I was earning in those jobs. But it has it felt that way for you too? Like, have you found yourself working a little bit harder than say when you had like the full-time gigs locked
Oh
up?
yeah, just because you got to do it all, man. You got to make your thumbnails. You got to schedule everyone. If I don't do like, so this podcast is like last on my priority list, but I've done it every week for 7 years. And
Wow, has it been 7 years?
I think so. I think the first episode was in 2016.
Wow.
It's 2017. So it's been maybe longer. It might even be longer. Like a long time. Like a long time I've been doing this show. And this show has been independent. This show was distributed by Sports Grid and now is back to me. And it's like there is no, and I actually don't really make any money off doing this show. Like this show is like kind of all extraneous. Like it's not monetized on YouTube. It did allow me to like start a Patreon and has like a paywall show, but this show in and of itself is really just my thing that I do. And you know, no one is going to be, if I don't post an episode this week, no one's going to be banging down my door.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's important to me. So I want to get it done. And that, yeah, I'm not asking anyone to cry for me. But it is when you are your own boss and you reap the consequences and the benefits of the work that you put in. Yeah, you just are going to spend more time working.
Yeah. And I brought that up not even to like say like complain woe is me or anything like that. I mean that the other way. It was illuminating for me when I started doing it, because I was like, oh wow, I didn't realize I hated what I was doing before.
Exactly.
And that was where the light came on. I was like, oh wow, I really like, I knew my fire was getting put out in the education world. Like I think I had maxed out what I was doing. And so it was time, but I didn't realize how aggressively past the time it was until I started doing this. And I was like, oh, this is what it's like to care about something, to like see. And honestly, similar to like improv, I know Pete's talked about this a little bit before, but the instant gratification you get from doing a live show in front of people, because like right away, like you get that dopamine hit right away. If something landed, if it didn't land, why not, whatever. And like, it's that kind of feeling is similar in the content stuff, because you can literally see after a show, oh, wow, I had 19 people from Indonesia watching this show. And that's wild. That's like a crazy experience. And so when you get that like data, it does, I don't know, it kind of like lights a fire a little bit.
It does. And it is also extra rewarding, like when you do something that's clearly more successful than the average. Like, I fired up a battle royale stream on a Tuesday and 137 people were concurrent watching. That's sick. But I did a whatever stream on Thursday and 417 people were in, and they were like, that feels great. I mean, it's just nice. It's nice to be liked. I think everyone responds well. You know, everyone does enjoy that, but it is, you know, there are a lot of trade-offs you make in the self-employment space. Like I'm paying for my own healthcare, right? Like I've got Obamacare right now, which is like not what I would be choosing for myself. I don't know. I haven't had a ton of time to stop and think about it, because I kind of just, my path was like, I had all these calls. I talked to the guys from ETR. I talked to the guys at NBC Sports, like a couple other, and everyone was like, you know, we have like X, Y, and Z, but nothing full time. And I was like, sure, like I can cobble it together and I can get enough money to not go to zero. But the move is totally trying to build something on your own. That's where the upside is.
Yeah. And like upside both financially, but also just like emotionally, mentally, like that's to me where like the real upside is. And yeah, and then like I think we talked about this too before you like officially launched or whatever. All of that stuff still exists a year from now too. So like if like it didn't go in a direction that you wanted to, it doesn't mean you're like, well, I'll never work again. It just like all of those opportunities, maybe they look a little different, but situations like that will still present themselves a year from now too. That's what I had to keep telling myself too. Like I can always go get a job at a college again if I have to. But that's not what I want to do. So let's just like throw some darts and see what happens.
I mean, the thing for me that I felt was like, oh, if you do self-employment and it just like sucks and there's no money in it, like I was in kind of a weird spot because I have like a big Twitter account and I've been on all these podcasts and everything. And like, yeah, if I went to go take a non-fantasy job, everyone would be like, oh, well, that dude just failed. Like that guy just flamed out in front of everybody. Like he bet on himself and the bet did not work, which is terrifying, bro. That right there is a thought of like literally failing in full public.
Yeah, I like think about that. That's shut up therapy, baby. When I moved to New York, I was probably like 5 or 6 years in, and I was like doing some stuff. Like I booked a commercial here and there and did some things. But I constantly was like, well, I guess I just have to stay here until I succeed, because I can't move back. What am I going to go back to Massachusetts so everybody publicly saw, hey, remember that kid that had a dream that he was going to go do comedy stuff is now coming back? Like the same thing. It's like, it feels like such a public failure. And what I had to really like get through, and of course there's always going to be people who are like, oh dude, you suck. Like, yes, those people exist, especially on the internet. But there are more people in your life that are still like blown away that you're even trying to do the thing to begin with. Like, so if you actually have conversations with those people, they're like, oh man, that's so sick you're doing that thing. Because they all want to do some, not content, but some version. They have some dream version of that.
So everyone's got a dream. Like ultimately at the end of the day, in a more political philosophy way, your labor is either being used to generate more capital for someone else or for yourself, and seizing the means of your own production is very liberating, even if it's comes with less comfort. Like just knowing that no one else is reaping. Well, I mean, there are brand deals and yada yada, but at the end of the day, you are Mike Zakarian LLC or Davis Mattek LLC is the reaper of the benefit,
right?
By and large.
And when the wins do come, like it feels different than when you get a promotion at your job or whatever. Like it feels different. The other thing I've been struggling with lately, I don't, and if you haven't disclosed this to your audience, you don't have to. But how old are you?
I'm 32 years old.
32. Okay. I am turning 40 in like 3 weeks. And so that has been like a whole nother month.
That's a whole thing.
Yeah, and it's not even like I think physically I'm starting to feel to like ass, so I think that's also part of it. But what's really been messing with me is just being like, wow, so in a couple weeks I'm going to be 40 years old and I'm still going to be telling people to like this stream and subscribe to the channel. And there's something that just feels so broken about that. But it's not. It's like this whole thing that you create in your head on your own. But it is like another weird hurdle that I've been dealing with, like emotionally with content creation of being like, wow, we're really doing this in our 40s.
No, I mean, that's a good point. Actually, just while you were talking, I was like, well, in a way, really what we're doing is we're all just feeding the YouTube algorithm and the advertisement monster. And like,
that's right.
There's a reason why the content creation job exists, which is, the economy is structured in such a way. That was the point I actually really wanted to get to, which is that the rewards of working a middle-class job for your entire life have been robbed from you for just as a society, Western society. That, like, do you know anyone? I'm trying to think if any of my close friends have had the same job since we graduated college. I don't think any, like, I'm just thinking of the guys who were in my wedding. Does anyone have the same job they had the month after we graduated? And I think the answer is no.
No, I was listening to a podcast recently where somebody said that, and I was like, "Oh, that's so fucking wrong." Oh, it was the Lonely Island and Seth Meyers podcast, which is now like my favorite palate cleansing podcast, where they're just chronologically going through the shorts they created at their time at SNL. I'm like, yes, that was made for me. But one of them said like they were explaining what just fell. All right, Bluetooth speaker down. We're good. We're good. They were explaining, I think it was this podcast, whatever, it doesn't matter. They were so detached because they were like, yeah, most people don't go from acting job to acting job. They have one steady job. Maybe they change it twice throughout their career. And I'm like, that's not true.
No, that is detached.
Yeah, that's maybe like my dad's generation, but this generation, everybody's bounced around a bunch of times. Like it's definitely adjusted.
Yeah. And so what that does is if there is no loyalty from the company, there's going to be no loyalty from you to the company. I guess people in startup culture get very obsessed with their company. It's totally live to work, not work to live type stuff. And we're a family here and all that stuff. And it's not to say, I mean, maybe I will someday have an employer that I'm like, oh, maybe I will work there forever. And like most of the employers I've had, I have no issue with, but I understand I'm only a cog in the machine and not the machine in and of itself. But the larger point is the rapidly decaying state of our nation state's currency means that you are like heavily incentivized to bet on yourself and bet in general, because there is no such thing as like saving. You're not just saving your money. Oh, I'm going to put 10% of my paycheck away and then I'm going to retire when I'm 65. Like that's not happening. Right. So that's why I think you do see like boomers and Gen Xers love to be like, oh, these kids, they think they're content creators. Like that can't be a job. That's so stupid. And it's like, well, yeah, but they literally see people become millionaires doing a very simple thing that they know how to do. They know how to edit. They know how to record. Now, maybe they won't end up being good at it. And it's why people love gambling. It's why people love Bitcoin. It's why people love same game parlays. It's because there really is not a consequence to losing money or losing security, because the middle class safety is such an illusion anyway.
I mean, it's so crazy because everything like I learned about finances when I was younger is just kind of like out the window now too, and not just from like my own POV, but just from like taking in other people's information, whether it's podcast, newsletter, whatever. You know, you were always told like, oh, you got to build up a savings, build up that savings,
Yeah,
build up
nest
that
egg.
savings. Yeah, and now they're like, actually, don't have a lot in your savings. Like that should be everywhere else but your savings at this point. You're totally right. It's just it's a different generation now of thinking, but it's also kind of funny because that's like what the country was founded on essentially to begin with too, was like this whole idea of like betting on yourself, and this idea of just being able to, you know, that was like the American dream, was to find success at a faster rate, right? Like that's it, where you're like, oh, you can go the gold rush, whatever it was. And so it is kind of funny that it's like reverted back to that in a little, in a way, I guess, in a different way, but in a way.
That is, yeah, I would not have put those things together. But yeah, basically what we're saying is me starting a YouTube channel and Mike starting a YouTube channel is the same thing as packing your family up in a covered wagon and going to San Francisco to try and find some gold. These are the same things.
Honestly, Davis, if we do this once a week, I think I would feel better, just because if we take this hour to just justify why we're doing what we're doing, I think this would be great. This would be good for me.
It would be great for me too. I worry that sometimes these things are too self-indulgent, although generally I think it's the same sort of navel gazing fascination I have, like with the stuff that Ethan writes about, like how this business works.
Yeah.
You are just sort of innately curious in how something you interact with works, even if you're not a part of it. Like it's the same reason people like to listen to the commentaries of their favorite shows or
Right.
whatever, or why one of the most popular genres of podcast is episode by episode discussions of classic TV shows.
Yeah.
Like people just love to know the behind the scenes stuff of how things work.
But that's honestly kind of what we were talking about earlier, because I was, I think I was actually talking about it with Pete about the Lonely Island podcast. It is like the fascination with the behind the scenes stuff. But for me, it's like, oh, it's these group of people who I had this belief that they like loved each other while they were making this thing. And now I'm listening to them just like interact with one another. You know what I mean? Like kind of what we were saying about like about content creation and like community building type shit. Like I feel like that's kind of similar, where them just getting together, shooting the shit is making you feel like they are a part of what they are doing. It's like, oh man, I would love to just like hang out with the Lonely Island. And this is like the closest I'm going to get to that. And so I'm into it. And I feel like that's kind of what the shows that I like anyways on YouTube. It's this idea of, it's almost like a clubhouse, like I'm hanging out with what's being discussed.
I like that more on Twitch, where it's
Mhm.
just hanging out. On YouTube, I watch more of I watch Chris Bumstead and I watch Sam Sulik, which really actually don't have a ton of they have overlap in terms of, probably they have a ton of overlap in terms of who watches their channel, but not in how the videos are shot or edited or produced or anything, which I guess is sort of interesting.
I'm looking up who these people are here, because I don't think I had heard of Sam Sulik. All right. Pretty big, pretty jacked.
He's like a 23-year-old dude who's on a ton of steroids, and his whole bit is there. He just like puts the video, his iPhone up in his car. It's probably not his iPhone. It's probably a DSLR. And he's just like, you got to eat your protein. You got to take your fish oil. And kind of his whole bit is more lo-fi, like not very highly produced videos. Like his thumbnails are just pictures.
Wow.
You know?
That's against every piece of advice I've ever gotten, is
well, here is a great piece of advice. This is the best piece of advice I could give to an aspiring content person, to myself or whatever. All that stuff on the edges, YouTube titles, thumbnails, tags, redirects, any hack you could have for the algorithm, those are all not even icing on the cake, dude. Those are sprinkles on top of the icing. Nothing can replace content that people like and enjoy. There's no way in streaming. Now, maybe in videos, that's not true. You could have the greatest video with the greatest information, but like if it's not well edited and if it doesn't sound good, like you do need to have good sound, good picture quality. Like that is all true. But like having the greatest thumbnail is not going to take you from 5,000 subscribers to 50,000.
Yeah, I had an interesting I work with this company called Oversubscribe who I feel like that's a whole separate episode of what they actually do, but they've like provided a couple of like content mentors, I guess, for a lack of a better phrase or word, and had like a consultation with someone who like specializes in content. And I got some really funny feedback which was good, because if you're going to pay for this shit, or like, give me constructive feedback. Don't just give me like the same cookie cutter stuff. And he was like, hey, I watched a lot of your stuff. It's like very engaging and entertaining. You are relying a lot on your face for people that don't know you. And I was
for
like,
the thumbnail, for the thumbnails.
No, not even that. Even just and this was probably for more of my recorded videos versus the live streaming stuff. But he's like, you gotta like, and I actually Pete's Deposit Kingdom videos. Sorry to keep just glazing over Zed.
No,
here in this episode.
he's the man. He's the man. I get it.
But in his like his Friday videos that he's posting on his Deposit Kingdom for like the Battle Royale, which have now just turned into him just drafting winners. Like, that's a great example of like, now he's got a lot of graphics coming in. There's a bunch of different things happening. And that was something like nobody had told me before. And I lack like great editing skills, but the guy was just kind of like, yeah, you have to like, it's just your face, man. Like and not that you're a bad looking guy, but you have people that have never heard or seen you or seen any of your shit before. And like, you just need them to like your face completely without giving them anything else. And so it was funny. I like instituted some like tweaks into that. Like, let's throw some graphics in here. We'll drop a video here and there. And like immediately the performance was better. Which I just thought that was so interesting, because again, I agree with you that most of that stuff is on the edges. Like, it is going to enhance all of your content for sure. But it's not necessarily like, oh man, if I just made a better thumbnail, I'd have 25,000 subs.
Stuff in the actual video, the content of the actual video. I mean, getting a good editor and things like that are going to be huge. But again, if you are as big as like, if you have 1.5 million YouTube subscribers or whatever, you can kind of just upload whatever you want. There's clearly a crest of like, okay, you got to be hyper targeted, hyper specific. Do it like for the super niche people who already found my channel. And then once you get to a certain size, you can just start to upload whatever you want. And this is like, I mean, we're talking like millions of YouTube subscribers before you can do that.
Right. Yeah. Once you get to that certain point. Yeah. We are not there yet. So we are still creating some.
No. And that is probably, that is probably good advice for life in general, actually, which is that the stuff around the margins and the edges is, the people tend to focus too much on the 1% when the 99% is the part that needs to be done. Like I actually know that for myself in my life, because I am obsessed with like health and fitness stuff, with like, oh, I read all these books about like, you know, can't have any seed oils in my house and things like that. But it's like, I'll also just like house 2 chocolate chip cookies if there are chocolate chip cookies on the table.
Yeah,
you know, I'm good at the 1%, but not always so hot at the 99%.
Right. I'm just good in like 4-week runs where I'll be like, oh, I need to adjust my diet or whatever, and then I'll be incredibly strict with it for about 4 weeks, and then eventually it'll go by the wayside. So I'm really good at getting into a fad and then bailing on it, which is not ideal, again, as approaching 40 and physically just, deteriorating. You gotta, those things are important, but fuck.
No, I mean, dude, that is one of the biggest hacks in life in general, is just finding a way to be disciplined.
Yeah.
Like, I would say I've obviously gotten a lot better at this in my life, but like in general, it is so easy to chase dopamine And I mean, that comes all the way back around to the job thing. Cause like, what is better dopamine than seeing a new YouTube subscriber or a new comment and seeing the number go up? I mean,
Yeah.
I check that YouTube Studio app
Oh,
75 times a day, probably even more than I check Twitter.
yeah, I have it open right now. It's like one of the tabs that's open right now. I started doing I do some like live before lock shows for So Rare NBA, which is like twice a week. And I started doing it with Worldwide Wob on Fridays, Rob Perez.
Oh yeah.
And so every time because I put it on Twitter for that reason, and every time he shares the video, I see my views go, because like in StreamYard. So I see it go from like 200 to 20,000. And it's both the coolest thing and most deflating thing ever, because it has nothing to do with what I'm doing. And like,
Yeah.
but it's just every single time you see that number spike, you're like, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit.
Wait, so you guys co-stream that, or
Yeah.
it's on his Twitter? It's on
It's
his
on,
Twitter.
well, so yeah, we simulcast it to so we start on my YouTube. I usually do an hour solo, and then he comes on for like the second hour. And so for the second hour, he'll share it. And then once that happens, that's when the number goes crazy. And I would say, like, maybe 3% of that number comes over, to YouTube. So I will take that every single
I was
time.
gonna say that's a good deal for you in
Yeah,
general.
it's honestly, it's incredibly generous of him, the fact that he's down to do it. And it was only supposed to be a one-off, and he had a good time, and he was like, I'll do this every Friday if you want. And we're actually doing one tonight because they have a special like Emirates Cup thing. But yeah, just incredibly generous of him. He doesn't need to do that.
No, that is the sort of thing that comes around to you in your
Yeah.
life if you are that type of person. That sort of, and I mean, like we've all been somewhere,
Yeah.
which is you don't really think about that, but like shit, what show were we on the other day? Might have been the Swolecast or something, or ship chasing. No, it was ADP chasing that we were doing this the other day. We were talking about like, how to pay it forward and things like that. And there are pretty simple ways to do that. But sometimes it's hard to be motivated to do that.
Yeah.
Shit, man.
I respond to almost every DM now. That's not a bot, but only because I know how it felt every time. Like I had Howard Beck from The Ringer come on the show one time, and I was like, why?
Oh
Why?
yeah.
I was like, why is Howard Beck opening this DM? Like, what is he doing? He shouldn't open this. Don't open DMs from strangers. But because like when moments
What
like
up, Beck?
dude, he's the best. He was again, just incredibly generous with their time to even be down to do it. So anytime somebody asks me to do anything, if I can swing it, I will do it. Whether like somebody has 1 subscriber or 1 billion, like I just know I've appreciated it every time it's happened, and you never know what that's gonna look like in the future too. So, it's the right attitude.
You don't. That's true. I don't know. Just like in the end, I guess I would say it's a shame that for most people to do this, something bad has to happen.
Yeah, dude, seriously.
That's kind of where I've landed, is like, yeah, I should have done this 5 years ago. I should have,
but you know what?
done this.
I always push back on that only because, like, do you think you'd be prepared to do it if this started 5 years ago? Like, do you think you would be? I don't know. Maybe that's just trying to be glass half full. That like I think if I try, I always think about this when moving to New York, because I moved when I was 30, and everybody around me that I was doing comedy with was like 22, and I was like, man, I would kill to be here if I was 22 and not already 30. And then I was like, yeah, but I wouldn't have the discipline that needed to grind this out. Like I would have been a psycho that was out till like 4:30 in the morning, Tuesday through Friday. Like it would have just been bad news. But I had some sort of adulthood behind me. Like, do you feel that way at all with this, or are you pretty like, oh man,
So I think the thing is, like, I've just always done some variety of this.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing YouTube shows since like 2013.
Dude, I remember
maybe even before that.
I remember being in the gym. This was when this must have been like 8 years ago. I was in the gym. It was like a 6-game NBA slate, and you were on some Roto Grinders show. And you called, it was like a Pacers Knicks game, maybe. and nobody was talking about it. And you were like, dude, I think this is like a sneaky game to attack. And it went into like 3 overtimes or something like that. And that was the first time I'd seen you on the show. And I think I followed you on Twitter that night because I was like, it was a fucking home run. It was like Oladipo was still on the Pacers.
I was gonna say, I'm trying to think of like who would have been the Pacers guy that I would have liked in like 2014.
I think
Victor Oladipo
Sabonis was
sounds
there
about
too.
right.
I think it was like Depot, Sabonis, and it might not have been against the
No,
Knicks.
that would have been even before Sabonis, because that was before maybe when Sabonis. No, that would have been before Sabonis was there, because Sabonis got drafted by Oklahoma City in 2015, right?
Oh yeah. You're right. You're right. Then I couldn't tell you anybody else that would have been on that Pacers roster. I don't think.
But the Pacers, they used to be a very fun basketball team.
Yeah.
2015. People forget DeMontis Sabonis played his rookie season for the Oklahoma City Thunder. People do forget, and they shouldn't.
That's when he's playing the 4 and shooting threes.
No one even remember, like, the amount of guys who have found their way through Oklahoma City in one way or another. I mean, it's really unbelievable. Yeah, and it's, all of this is not to say, like, if I find a good full-time gig out there again, I would love to do it. I do, to your earlier point, I can't really imagine going back to not wanting to do YouTube though, because it is like I do get joy out of it. It's just it is particularly like the summer, like the in-season stuff is good and it's fun and I like it and I would be doing it anyways. But like by like week 11, I'm just like,
fried.
God, man.
Well, you're right. Everybody's fried too. Not even
everyone's
just like,
fried.
Yeah, you can feel it in the chat. You can feel.
But God, dude. August 13th, we've got like a preseason game. Your guy's higher on the depth chart than expected. And you're just like, oh my God, dude. Nothing has ever been better than this Best Ball Mania team right here.
Yeah. And then, and you do a marathon, like drafting stream, you get like 9,000 people coming through. I so impressed every time, either, you or anybody else that I follow that does like BBM stuff, how many people were watching drafts this summer. Like people, the number 12 this summer. It was crazy.
Yeah, people love it. I mean, I love it. Like I'm like living my own private life, and I'm like, I wonder if Pete's got a new video up. I wonder if Gretchen Sean have posted a new stealing bananas. Like I need more content.
Yeah. Back to what you're saying about going to a full-time thing. I don't think I could not be a boss, my own boss, I think, for the rest of time. So this has to work out, I think. I've just that's an adjustment that's happened where I'm just too irritable. I think now when I have somebody else telling me what to do, which is probably something I need to work on, but it was what I noticed. Like, and again, it goes back to like how much harder I've worked since being my own boss, but I just respond to it.
How do you handle like work-life balance type things? Like, oh, I could just take a vacation in week 12. Like no one's yelling at me or whatever.
Honestly, it's been the other way. Like, the issue I've run into is not like I'll work a couple hours on Saturday or something and then do it again on Sunday, just because it's like, oh, I have a couple of downtime and I could crush an episode of The Penguin, or I could like fire up all my thumbnails for the rest of the week. And so I this year specifically have done a much better job of trying to be more efficient with my work time, and then also taking some time away so that I'm not just constantly going, because I did notice that like I burnt out pretty quickly in like February last year. And so I wanted to make some adjustments so that wasn't the case. So I've been doing a much better job. I actually started doing the NBA bit Monday, Wednesday, Friday this year so that I could work on some evergreen videos to drop throughout the week as well. And that's the first time I've done that, because I used to do it 5 times a week, but it's just because I think I was like spinning too much of being like, well, I got to make this work. So I constantly have to be grinding out.
Got to be grinding all the time.
Exactly. And that ends up being bad. That's like bad for business. Your content will suffer eventually. Your relationships will suffer. I do remember my wife just at one point being like, hey man, you chose to do this. So if you're not, you got to be liking this. Like, it's okay to complain about work, but you have to be liking what you're doing right now. Otherwise, like, why go get a real job if that's the case?
No, I totally relate to that in the sense of like any down moment, I'm like, oh man, but I could be working. I could be doing X, Y, and Z. It's why people are, I've heard like some of my wife's friends are like nurses and things like that, where it's like, when you leave your job, that's it. You're not taking it home with you. You're not, oh, I could respond to that email. I could do that. I've heard, so like when I've told people about my job, they're like, well, aren't you just always working? And I'm like, yeah, like I'm basically responding to emails. Like, not that I am always working, but I could always be working.
Yeah.
Or you could theoretically be in a perpetual state of working.
Yeah. Well, and feeling like you haven't made it yet. You are like, I know for me personally, anytime somebody that I feel like is above is the weird word to use, but like, above me. Let's just say somebody's above me and they ask something of me, I will go out of my way to like make
To
that.
do it.
Yeah, to make that, because it's like, I feel like these are opportunities right now where I'm at this like early stages of doing this, that I need to make sure I'm just, taking advantage of those opportunities. And it's hard to turn that switch off, because if somebody asks you, you're like, oh, hey, can you like jump on this stream? And I'm like, oh man, this would be like really good exposure, get new eyeballs, different eyeballs out on this thing. And it's just like, again, it's just hard to shut that off. Like sometimes you have to just take care of yourself a little bit and be like, hey, I don't need to, this is going to be like my 12th hour of content this week. Is anybody asking me to do 12 hours of content? Does anybody want to see my face for 12 hours? Like probably not. You can take an hour off.
Dude, that's really interesting. Cause like I literally do, like I guess 12 shows a week, I think.
Yeah, that's
like,
probably where I'm at too.
That,
like 10,
that might be too much.
Yeah.
That might be, it's like, it's certainly, it's more content than even the person who loves me the most could ever engage with. Right. Like, let's say, this hypothetical super fan out there is like, I'm going to engage in every minute of that dude's content. They couldn't get to all of it if they wanted to.
That's a full half day. If they did nothing else for a half a day, 12 hours.
Yeah, that's just, so that's probably something for me to think about next year. That's probably something for me to be like, well, like, to come back to our king, Pete, he does, I think, 4 videos a week on his primary channel now. That is probably a much better balance for him, for his child, and probably honestly for the people that like him. You know what I'm saying? Like, just, or like, I don't know, here, let's look at Fantasy Flock. This guy, he's the biggest YouTube channel that I know of for like underdog stuff. I wonder how many videos he does. So he basically does a video a day, more or less.
Wow.
But these are 18 minutes, 17 minutes, 26 minutes, and they're edited. Maybe he might actually, you know what? I take it back. Fantasy Flock, he's the biggest grinder in the world. Shout out to that guy. That guy gamed the algo, 255,000 subscribers.
And then he's
got good thumbnails. He kills it.
And then he's got the Dynasty Football Flock with 37,000 subs, the Flock League with 22,000 subs. Yeah, he's cooking.
That guy, he's cooking. So shout out to him. So I guess actually I'm coming all the way back around. No time off. Work harder. More shows. Better thumbnails. Start a second channel. Start a third channel. And do it that way. There are many paths to success. That is true in life. That is true in business. That is true in YouTube. That is true in whatever, name your thing. Many paths to success.
Have you found like a good rhythm to it though? Do you feel like you do a good job of like, I know you're still probably, working out for a walk, whatever, checking the studio app, but for the most part, are you doing like a good job of being like, all right, I need to take like a few hours away, or will you take a day off, or you're pretty much 7 days a week right now?
I basically don't work Saturdays.
Yeah.
So basically Saturday, maybe I'll respond to an email or two or check Discord or whatever, but Saturdays I'm done. I'm out. Hanging out with my wife and my dogs and stuff. That is the move.
That's where I'm at too on Saturdays.
Which is like, that's a good balance. I do 2 videos on Friday. So if people are really hankering for some content, they have multiple things they can choose from. That's kind of where I'm at. I mean, maybe next year it'll be different. Maybe I will be working on Saturdays. And then, I haven't even gotten to the off season yet. I'm like, dude, I don't know what that is going to look like.
Yeah.
I got no clue what.
That's where you get to have fun, though. I think you do some weird stuff, just see what the audience responds to. And because I remember the first NBA offseason, I was like, this is where I find my edge. Because I was like, everybody else is taking time off from content. And I'm like, no, we're going to double down and like go hard in the offseason, which was fun to do the first year. After that, I was like, okay, I can't be doing this. I still did my regular shows, but I was like, we got to chill out a little bit. But you get to do some weird stuff, see what people are into. And then it seems like there's more hunger for fantasy football content in the offseason than in season. Based on, at least for me, like when I'm watching.
No, you couldn't be more correct. You really couldn't. Like it's very true. Like I don't know why that is. I think it's just because your hopes and dreams have not been dashed yet. You just
right.
you're feeling very good about all of your fictional fantasy football teams.
Yeah, in August,
for whatever reason,
dreaming of a 25% advance rate. Not in November, baby. Not in November.
No, it's incredibly true. All right, Mike, let's get out of here. Tell the people about the NBA bit and about the NBA fantasy channel. Send them in that direction, and then we'll be on our way.
Yeah, so a couple things. The NBA bit, we do a daily show Monday, Wednesday, Friday over there. I think it's just NBA bit with Mike Zakarian. And then also have an Elite Fantasy Hoops channel, Elite Fantasy Hoops, where we do everything from Underdog to So Rare, some daily stuff in there as well. So both of those are pretty active. So go check those out. We also just started a new show with Trey Edwards, on the Count the Dings channel, called Hoop Sense. So the first episode dropped last week, and I think that's going to be close to weekly. But yeah, it's like an in studio one. We're having fun with that, so go check that out too.
Wow, yeah. You're in studio, bro.
Dude, one of the funniest things, I made this video maybe a year ago that was just like a spoof of wanting to be the next generic white guy co-host.
Yeah, these are good bits of like, oh, you're the guy who's tossing the question to Trae Young.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Incredibly good bit.
And Trey Edwards, who I've been following for a while, I saw him post something saying, I'm starting a new basketball podcast. You need to live in New York and I need a co-host. And I just sent him that video and he responded right away. And so, yeah, we're doing it like in studio, which makes, again, me want to be even more successful so we can just only do in studio stuff, because in studio is sick and somebody else is taking care of the editing. That is the dream. That is the dream.
Yeah. No editing. That's what, here's the secret. That's why I do live streams.
Yes.
No editing.
Yes.
No editing.
It's
true. Live stream. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to this. Let's go ahead and get out of here. I will be back next week. I believe I already have next week's guest lined up, which is beautiful. You love that. Please like the video. Please subscribe to the video. If you're listening to this on audio, consider subscribing to it on YouTube. Feed the algorithm. Help me out. And we will be back next week. Adios.